14 May 1945, Munich, a back room off Türkenstrasse. In a notebook that would be hidden behind floorboards, a clerk named Karl H. writes, "Our peace will be built on silence, because the truth would burn down what little is left." He keeps the line short, dangerous, honest. He will tell no one. He will learn to live by it. The city around him is a field of brick and dust. Rubble makes new hills. Streets are corridors through heaps of roofs and beams. Church towers stand like broken teeth. The mathematics of stone is simple. For every building pulled down by bombs, 1,000 hands must lift 1,000 bricks 3 times. The arithmetic of ruin is measured in steps taken, loads carried, backs bent. The occupation begins not with speeches but with signs. Curfew 2200. No looting. Report firearms. Tanks idle at intersections that had names before, now called by soldiers' maps. The first days carry the sharpness of fear. Rumors move faster than lorries. Red Army atrocities in the East are told in whispers. American patrols in the South carry both candy and authority. British trucks roll through North German towns with boxed rations and clipped orders. French units mark their commands along the Rhine. The quadrant lines of the new order cut across the map and into habits. Karl walks to his office at the city building that still has a roof on one side. He finds a door. The records are gone or damp. There is no payroll. There are lists of dead, lists of missing, lists of evacuees, lists with no names left to claim them. The mathematics of absence is a bureaucracy all its own. One mother asks for paper to certify that her son is dead so she can receive ration cards as a widow. Another refuses the paper because paper makes a fact. The city issues both. Women pick at masonry with hammers. Trümmerfrauen. Some are veterans of the rubble brigades demanded by the party during the last months. Others are there because their husbands are gone, their brothers gone, their empty purses loud in their pockets. Municipal notices conscript women aged 15 to 50 for shifts that begin with dawn and end when the light is gone. A photograph in the Bavarian State Archives shows rows of them with scarves tied tight, sleeves rolled past the elbow, faces that do not look at the camera. A 1945 occupation report notes, female labor in clearing is enthusiastic in public presentations, reluctant in practice. Motives are survival, not ideology. May 1945 is not yet hunger. Summer markets reopen. Potatoes grow in garden strips along tram lines. Chickens roost in bombed-out rooms. The full arithmetic is delayed. The first winter brings it. The next makes it brutal. Hunger. Winter. 1946 to 1947. The arithmetic of calories is printed on rations. Official allocations in the American zone drop below 1,200 calories per day for many workers, lower for those without heavy labor. Bread at 200 grams. Meat rarely. Fat at 20 grams. In November and December, fuel shortages turn rooms into refrigerators, water freezes in jug and basin. The mathematics of heat is a ledger that never balances. The Berliners speak of turnip winter. The Bavarians speak of beet soup. The Ruhr speaks of coal that cannot be both burned and exported. The black market opens not like a shop, but like a rumor that settles into a square. Teresian wheeze fills with blankets, spread the length of a block, each a miniature inventory, boots, a pan, a clock that no longer ticks. Cigarettes become currency. Ami cigarettes are standard. A pack of Chesterfields buys a winter coat. 4 packs buy a sack of potatoes. An Allied intelligence summary from February 1947 calls it the cigarette economy and measures it in a chart. 1 cigarette equals 7 to 10. Reichsmarks in December. 1 cigarette equals a kilo of flour if the seller is desperate and the buyer arrives before the police do. Carl writes numbers on requisition forms for municipal soap and coffee for office staff. He steps around the market when he can, and when he cannot, he trades for his mother. He breaks a cigarette from a pack and counts it as 3 slices of bread on a good day. The arithmetic of hunger has few decimal places and no mercy. The city has new rulers, but government functions need old hands. The first mathematics the Americans attempt is political. Denazification. The questionnaires arrive in stacks. Fragebogen. 31 questions to calculate a person. Were you a member of the NSDAP? When? What rank? Were you in affiliated organizations? SA? SS? NS Frauenschaft? Did you donate? Did you attend? Did you denounce? Each answer is a variable for a function that will spit out a category. The Sprüchkammern are established. Tribunals staffed by Germans, overseen by Allied authorities. Categories are announced with precise names and imprecise edges. Category I, Hauptschuldige, major offenders. Category II, Belastet, offenders. Category III, Minderbelastet, lesser offenders. Category IV, Mitläufer, followers. Category V, Entlastet, exonerated. For each category, a set of consequences. Prison terms for the first, fines, property confiscations for the second, restrictions on employment for the third, warnings and a clean paper for the fourth and fifth. In practice, the system learns to solve for stability. The mathematics of guilt comes up against the algebra of need. A city requires engineers, doctors, teachers, clerks. They had joined. Many. Some early, some late, some to get a job, some for belief, some to protect a spouse, a child. OMG Gus reports record the scale. In the American zone alone, by early 1947, more than 13 million questionnaires had been distributed, millions of hearings scheduled, tens of thousands of offenders categorized. The numbers overwhelm the will to purity. Evidence comes in the form of affidavits known as Perselschein, white certificates, named after a soap that promised to make things clean. A neighbor writes, "He helped me when my husband was taken." A parish priest signs, "He was not a political man." A former party colleague writes, "He followed orders but did not give them." The Sprüchkammer files stack high in the Bundesarchiv, correspondence labeled with clipped words, Beantragt, anerkannt, abgelehnt. Carl sits in a room with a wooden chair and answers soft questions. He had been a bookkeeper before 1933. He joined the party in 1937. He tells the chamber that he needed his job when the office was gleichgeschaltet. He paid dues. He attended meetings twice. He never gave a speech. He never denounced. He gives the names of 2 men he helped by writing false dates in their files. He produces one letter from a woman whose husband's case he slowed by misfiling it. The chamber writes in neat script, Mitläufer. Category 4. Category 4. Fine of 50 Reichsmarks. A professional ban for 6 months, then probationary return to his office. His boss is a different case. A blocklighter who signed reports with vigor. He had been removed in May. He is back by 1948 behind a different desk with a different title. The mathematics of guilt is uneven. It is not justice. It is administration with moral residue. The occupation authorities, in privately candid memos, say so. An American political officer in Munich, August 1946, "If we insist on thorough denazification, we risk paralysis. If we relax, we risk moral rot. We appear to be choosing controlled decay." The numbers of displacement rival the numbers of guilt. Trains arrive from the east with faces at every window. Sudeten Germans, Silesians, East Prussians. Expelled by edict and revenge, by policy and panic, by the inevitable arithmetic of redrawn borders. Potsdam makes lines on maps with sharp Local committees in Czechoslovakia and Poland enforced them with blunt instruments. By the close of 1946, millions have moved westward into a West that has room only on paper. Bavaria lists arrivals with crisp ticks. A ledger from Weilheim shows village budgets broken by newcomers. A family of 5 placed in a single room above a butcher shop. The mathematics of rooms becomes violent. A notice is nailed to a door. You must share. The existing tenant writes a complaint to the landrat. My own children cannot sleep. Reply. The arithmetic is official. We ask for understanding. Understanding does not come. Tension lives in stairs and kitchens. The dialects are foreign. The food is already scarce. The expelled carry a grief that cannot be hung in a closet. They carry feathers from pillows stuck to coats from a night on a road. They carry newspapers printed by expellee associations with names of lost towns printed in black. At the church on Sunday, someone shifts a few pews to make space for the newcomers. A local farmer mutters that the refugees bring lice and trouble. A newcomer writes in an oral history collected decades later. I learned to say, we again in a place that reminded me every day I was an outsider. The arithmetic of jobs compounds the equation of rooms. The mines and railroads and factories need hands, but permits are needed, and permits are issued by offices reconstructed from the same desks and drawers that stamped papers for the previous regime. The displaced stand in lines. They stand for hours. They stand blinking at signs. Arbeitserlaubnis. Wohnungsamt. In those lines, the past is not discussed. A woman in a headscarf asks, do you have a spare blanket? A man with a hollow chest asks, is there work? The mathematics of victims comes into view, not as columns on ledger, but as walking people in striped jackets that still fit because no one has offered a new set of clothes. Displaced persons camps fill former Wehrmacht barracks and SS training grounds, and once famous schools. Feldafing, near Munich. Landsberg, Bergen-Belsen. Germans pass outside fences and do not look in. Some are brought in. April and May 1945, Allied units march local party officials and townspeople through camps to see the dead. Then the surviving film is taken. Allied occupation orders require municipal theatres to play newsreels of the camps to audiences who sit in quiet and emerge into streets that look like the films they have just seen, only without skeletal bodies. The distance between knowledge and admission is measured in inches. Many Germans say, we did not know. Some did not. The bureaucracy of murder hid its core, but smoke was visible and trains were audible. The arithmetic of denial uses the language of powerlessness and fear. We could do nothing. We were afraid. We had to think of our own. An Allied public opinion survey from October 1946 notes, large segments of population acknowledge crimes but reframe their own suffering as equal or primary. The DP population writes and sings and waits. Jews organize committees, build schools within the camps, print newspapers in Yiddish and German. UNRRO supply food and medicine, report thefts of deliveries by local men with forklifts. German townsmen grumble that DPs are eating well under Allied protection while their own children lose weight. A July 1946 British Zone report, DPs receive 2,000 calories per day, German civilians below 1,500. Resentments mix with guilt, then with silence. A few moments of contact puncture it. A German nurse at a DP clinic gives a child a piece of chocolate from her own ration. A man named Nathan writes in a camp paper, one woman looked at me and said, forgive me. I could not. I nodded anyway. Next to these economies of food and guilt, the economy of money returns. June 20, 1948. Currency reform. The old Reichsmark becomes the Deutsche Mark in the Western zones. People line up at distribution points to receive their starting allotments. 40 marks for an adult, 20 for a child. New notes with new designs. The black market buckles. Shelves fill. Not overnight, but quickly enough to feel like relief printed on paper. The mathematics of exchange changes in a day. One old mattress loses half its price. One bag of flour loses its shadow price entirely as it reappears in actual stores. A week after the reform, a man who had traded half his furniture for food stands in front of a bakery and cries because he can buy bread with money again. The Berlin airlift begins days later, but in Munich the change is quieter. Luftbrücke planes drone over the other half of the country because Stalin closed roads. In the American and British zones, the airlift is a lesson in logistics made public. Tonnage figures appear in newspaper columns like sports scores: 500,000 tons, 1,000 tons. The mathematics of Cold War supply becomes a new form of politics. The front lines are rail lines and air corridors. The arithmetic of guilt stops being printed. The arithmetic of calories returns to solvable equations. Bread rises. The economy begins to move. Karl is rehired full-time in September. His office receives new typewriters from American surplus. He is tasked with paying contractors for clearing operations, then for building. He signs off on receipts for the delivery of cement. He points at plans that rearrange streets and create new lines of movement where old alleys used to be. A new housing block is planned in Schwabing for families of 4. The apartments are measured to the centimeter. The mathematics of walls is now not about dividing existing space, but about creating it. The Marshall Plan comes with ships and crates and numbers and slogans. ERP allocations show up in municipal memos as line items. 482 tons wheat, 1950 Q1. 12 machine lathes for municipal workshop. Posters display hands shaking across oceans. Newspapers carry photographs of crates stamped with "For European Recovery." The money arrives as credit and guidance. American advisors meet German officials in rooms with urns of coffee. The Americans insert phrases into discussions about competition and politics and unions and democracy. This is not charity. It is strategy. The arithmetic of the Cold War requires angels on ledgers that include factories and ballots. The Bundesarchiv holds polite letters about procurement and impatient telegrams about delays. A 1949 memorandum from a Bavarian ministry says, "We acknowledge dependency on ERP shipments and strive for domestic sources." The economy grows not because of a single infusion, but because of a net of changed incentives. Currency that holds value. Price signals that entice production. A workforce that learns how to move in a world no longer dictated from a party office. A politics that decides to reverse some decisions while refusing to interrogate others too closely. By 1949, a new state writes a basic law. May 23, 1949. The Federal Republic of Germany is announced in Bonn, a small capital for a small state still in a large shadow. Elections are held. Parties that existed before 1933 return with changed faces. A new Christian Democratic Union pulls Catholics and Protestants under a single roof and makes a language of the center. Social Democrats rebuild with old fire but tempered by memories of vulnerability. The Communist Party exists legally but under pressure. The voters come to the urns by the millions. Their votes are arithmetical acts of assent to a system they tell themselves is new, though many of the names on lists of candidates are familiar. Denazification winds down as amnesty winds up. The system's files are bound and shelved. The Spruchkammern close. In 1951, Article 131 of the Basic Law resolves the status of those civil servants removed by the Allies. The 31 laws reinstate pensions and positions for many. The mathematics of bureaucracy weighs the risk of excluding a generation of administrators against the moral headlines that inclusion would write. The scales tip toward inclusion. Adenauer, the Chancellor, speaks of reconciliation and order. He negotiates with the Allied powers to reduce sentences for war criminals. He demands the release of POWs still in the East. He tells the people that a stable world requires letting go. The systematic outcomes are documented in careful scripts. An Allied summary, 1951, the drive for stability has trumped the initial drive for thorough clemency or severity. The new German leadership appears more pragmatic than penitent. Karl reads newspapers because he is paid to write notices and must know the tone of the times. He feels the bargain in his bones. He does not articulate it at home. He eats soup, thanks the woman he will later marry for making it, and goes to work. He watches men who once wore party pins now wear tie clips and talk about productivity. He does not ask them about a list he once saw on a desk. He counts. He files. He clears some papers and loses others to piles that go missing when a new filing system is introduced. In the streetcar, he sits near a boy with a satchel. The boy opens a school book. The chapter on the war lists dates and locations. There is a paragraph on Hitler's rise, a paragraph on the war. There is a page on bombings and their devastation. There is a paragraph on expulsions and suffering in the East. There is not a chapter on the camps. The teachers speak of the time of National Socialism with a tone that implies a weather pattern that arrived and departed, not thunderstorms made by decisions. Public commemorations shift into new forms. The Volkstrauertag remembers the dead of all wars. Wreaths laid at memorials in town squares commemorate sons and fathers lost on the Eastern Front, the Western, the skies over England, the sea. A few years later, in 1952, the Chancellor stands to announce agreements for compensation to Jewish victims. The Luxembourg Agreement sets sums and schedules. Money begins to move from West German accounts to Israel, to survivors. The arithmetic of atonement is set in installments. Some Germans resent paying, as if the sums were insults added to injury. Others feel relief that numbers are doing a job words could not. A letter sent to the Süddeutsche Zeitung in 1953 reads, "Let us pay and be done with it." The writer does not sign a name. The Cold War deepens. 1953 brings an uprising in the East. Workers in Berlin go into the streets with banners about bread and freedom. Soviet tanks make clear which arithmetic wins in those months. West Germans watch black and white photographs in their newspapers and decide, if they had not already, which side they are on. 1955 brings rearmament of the West under the new NATO umbrella. The mathematics of security is drawn in tanks and treaties. Karl, now a father to a baby who survives his first winter with only minor bronchial attacks, nods at a headline and goes back to pacing with a colicky child on his shoulder. Economic data write a new story. Growth rates of 8, 9, 10%. Factory shifts grow. Volkswagen increases production. Siemens rebuilds. Bosch hires. The Ruhr Valley starts to smoke with ambition more than ruin. The dwelling construction law of 1950 produces apartment blocks with designs that will be known as settlements. The small living room with a tiled stove, the bedroom with a wardrobe fixed to the wall, the kitchen with a formica table. The wallpaper has small flowers. The mathematics of privacy returns. Karl, promoted in 1952, moves his family into a two-room flat with shared facilities on the landing. He pushes a pram down a hall of contented size. His downstairs neighbor is a widow who cleared rubble as a younger woman and now tends a window box with geraniums. His upstairs neighbor is a former officer of something who says little and reads everything. Across the courtyard, ex-belly families hang sheets that are somehow whiter than everyone else's. At Christmas, the courtyard smells of goose fat and cigarettes and soap. He keeps his notebook from the war years hidden but not burned. He adds to it short lines, dates, a line from an interrogation report that he copied when he was alone in the office. Subject states he attended rallies but did not listen. A line from an occupation summary, denazification proceeding with diminishing returns. A line from an Allied public opinion survey, Germans in American zone less pro-Nazi than in 1945, but more self-pitying. He writes these lines as if they will tell him something new if he reads them often enough. The arithmetic of forgetting takes form not as a blank, but as a new pattern. It favors certain facts, ignores others. It repeats stories of survival under bombs. It retells the night raids as if they were the war itself. It prints photographs of children in ruins. It leaves many spaces where names should be. It places the labor of women in the rubble in the center, sometimes to honor them, sometimes to use them as cover for the absence of other reckonings. It allows men to keep secrets because their skills are needed to run a ledger. Not everyone keeps quiet. Church groups meet. Writers write essays that nobody wants. The trials in Frankfurt in the early 1960s, not yet on the horizon in 1955, will gather threads that now lie loose. But in Karl's time, the mathematics is still skewed. He does not go to Dachau when he can go. He does not seek out survivors when they ask to speak. He tells himself that he is not indifferent, just tired. He is not lying, but his truth is smaller than it should be. He hears the return of the last POWs with the sound of railway brakes. 1955, homecomers arrive. Heimkehrer, thin men in oversized suits. They stand on platforms with flowers in hands that tremble. The country cheers. The Chancellor smiles on a platform and speaks of a miracle. The arithmetic of loss is now packaged as an arithmetical gain. One returned equals one family completed. A newspaper prints a photograph of a former student of Karl's school who was once reported missing, now holding a child he has never met. Karl sees the photo and thinks of his brother, who never returned and was declared dead by the state, only after his mother made 3 trips to an office with a file that grew thinner with each visit. He writes in his notebook that night, "What is the difference between a file that sits and a grave that is never found?" In the office, the files thicken. Approvals, payments, plans, plans, plans. The city builds a new school. The curriculum is revised in small increments. A teacher of history in 1956 reads aloud from a new manual that uses the word dictatorship, but also uses time of hardship with equal weight. Students take notes because exams are in June and grades matter. The children do not know what is missing until they become adults in a different decade and look back. Karl learns the mathematics of compromise. He hires a man in 1957 who had been suspended as a junior official in 1946, then moved to a factory, then returned with a recommendation from a city councillor. The man is competent. He is polite. He avoids politics. He remembers ledgers better than anyone else. He does not speak about a pamphlet he wrote in 1938. He is good for the office. He is bad for the story. This is how the arithmetic works. An addition in one column requires subtraction in another. As the Wirtschaftswunder is named, as if prosperity were a form of magic rather than the outcome of policy and effort and luck, the city squares fill with lights at night. People sit in chairs on sidewalks and drink beer. They go to cinemas with American movies dubbed into German. They laugh at jokes that assume the present is everything and the past is an inconvenient uncle who must be greeted at Christmas and then avoided the rest of the year. Advertising takes over street corners. Trains arrive on time. The new currency feels as solid as the stones in the new apartment blocks. An Allied sociological study in 1958 finds that Germans regard democracy as the best form of government for us, at rates unimaginable a decade before. Many cannot articulate why. They like the predictability. They like the stability. They like the absence of fear. They also like the absence of fear. They also like that the new state does not ask too many questions. The mathematics of compliance is now easy. Obey the law, pay taxes, say little. The surveillance is gone. The silence. In 1961, a wall goes up in Berlin. A line of concrete makes the Cold War's equation a matter of construction and permits. The front line hardens, but it is also clarified. In Munich, the city hums with a prosperity that insults memory. A new generation arrives inside Volkswagen buses with blankets and guitars, asking the unasked questions. They will be loud in a few years. They will point at files and ask why so many signatures in this era belong to men with party memberships in the last. They will not accept the mathematics of stability as a reason. They will hold up mirrors in classrooms. But in this story, the center is earlier. The questions are not yet loud. The voices are low. The occupation files settle. The denazification papers are organized by archival codes. The DP camps are closed or moved. Survivors go to Israel, America, Canada, some to West Germany's cities, quiet at first, then less so. The expulsions become associations with clubhouses and maps on walls. The state collects dues and pays compensation. The economy runs. The arithmetic of Karl's life contains variables that did not solve themselves. He carries them through years like terms in an equation that he cannot cancel. He finds tools to ignore them. A child's fever, a wife's laugh when a neighbor tells a rude joke, the smell of coffee that is no longer ersatz, a retirement letter in a typewritten envelope that says, politely, that the city thanks him for his decades of service. He writes one last entry in his notebook in the autumn of 1968, a time when streets fill with students who use words he never would have written in 1945 and teachers he would not have met in 1950. The leaf outside his window scratches on the glass. His handwriting is slower. He copies a line he wrote in 1945 and then adds to it. He writes, "Our peace was built on silence because the truth would have burned down what little was left. We were right to build. We were wrong to be silent." Both things can be true. The war after the war was fought in offices and kitchens, and when we turned our faces away from things, it ran not across a battlefield, but through my memory and my paperwork.